Hello and welcome to That Nerd Thing, where we uncover the magical impact that fandoms have on our lives. I'm Morgan, and today I am back with Pam for our Bridgerton Season 3 Part 2 reaction episode. I'm so excited. Hi, Pam.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me back.
I am so glad that you are back here with me today because Season 3 has been wild. But Pam, before we jump in, anything new happening over in your podcast world?
I'm so glad you asked. Thank you so much. Yes. So I host a podcast called Millennial, which I do with Andrew and Laura, who have also been guests on That Nerd Thing. And so you probably heard me talk about that either at the top of the Bridgerton episode or in the episode I did with Morgan whenever we recorded that. And since then, we've actually launched a brand new show because, I guess time does not exist for us over in the Hypeable family of podcasts. And so we're really excited that we are doing an all new pop culture show. It's called What the Hype, and we're really excited about it. We are covering all different kinds of fandoms over there. And the setup for that show is really cool and one that I'm super excited about because we're really hoping that we can be a show that introduces people to new fandoms. So anytime we cover a larger title like Bridgerton, for example, we'll kick things off by giving you all a primer episode, and that'll kind of clue you into what the show's about and get you started with everything you need to know to become a fan. And subsequent episodes will consist of deeper dives and deepest dives and even deeper dives, depending on how many episodes we plan for that. We do have a Bridgerton episode up now. It is the primer. And we're going to be recording a part 2, which is going to be a deep dive into season 3 tomorrow. So we're recording this on Tuesday. We'll record on Wednesday, and we're going to have Morgan on for that. So if you like this and you want to hear more, you can come to What the Hype and enjoy our episode on that as well.
Yes, definitely check it out. It's so good. I love it. I was so excited when it came out. The theme song is just amazing. The cover art, it's so good. And all of you have such amazing chemistry. It's such a good show. So everybody definitely check it out.
Yeah, we're really excited that people like you have been so receptive of the new idea because we know that, there's only so many hours in the day, and anybody that's a fan of pop culture specifically, you only have a certain amount of time that you get to dedicate to consuming content. So the fact that listeners like you are joining us on this journey too really means a lot. We really appreciate you all spending time with us. So thank you so much in advance if anybody listening heads on over to What the Hype to check it out because we really appreciate it.
Go check it out. All right, so before we get into our discussion, I do want to remind everyone that this episode will contain spoilers for Bridgerton, and everything from seasons 1, 2, and 3 is fair game and on the table for us to talk about. And we might jump in with some future book spoilers, but we will let you know before we say those. And just like Bridgerton, this episode will probably be explicit, so just keep all of that in mind before listening. So if you don't know why I'm currently listening to You Belong With Me by Taylor Swift on repeat, or why I received some listener feedback that they wished that they lost their virginity to Colin, then go back, watch Bridgerton, and then come back to this episode.
Wow, that's incredible feedback.
I know. All right, Pam. I have so many initial reactions to part 2. What was your initial reaction to it?
I have to be honest. I have some issues with part 2, and I think that we'll kind of unpack those as we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of everything that went on. But I think that overall, I think that part 2 is pretty good. The pacing was kind of crazy. That was one thing that I was really concerned about going into the second half, especially given that we left things off with Colin and Penelope engaged, but Colin not knowing about Lady Whistledown, which is a huge deviation from the book because in the book he finds out before the carriage scene happens, right before, and then he proposes anyway, so he's well aware of everything. And so I kind of figured it was going to cause some drama, and it definitely did. But I think that there is still a lot to love in the back half and in the season as a whole, despite the fact that I do have some small issues with things.
Yeah, I think I felt the same way. And I watched it twice, and I don't know how I feel about it. There are a lot of moments I really loved, but I don't have that reaction that I had after the first part where I was just like loving it and ready for the second part. And maybe part of that is due to the fact that there wasn't really a cliffhanger now at the end. And maybe it's just like the nature of where the first part ended.
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, you don't really have a cliffhanger at the end of a Bridgerton season, right? You want an open-ended, happy ending. You don't want anything to end on drama. And so I was prepared for that. My concern was how we were going to get there in a way that felt satisfying for the couple, because even though there are a lot of subplots that are always happening in a season of Bridgerton, the core of the story really is the romance, right? And so you want to make sure that that's satisfying. And I think that for me personally, I wish we would have spent a little bit more time on Colin and Penelope. And I think that that is why the second part fell a little bit flat for me the first time around. But I will tell you how I think they could have fixed it. And maybe I'll just wait until we get to that part, because it specifically happens in episode 7. And when I was rewatching this morning, I even like texted my friend Rachel, and I was like, Rachel, I figured it out. I figured out what they should have done, and then it would have been fine.
I'm like looking at my notes of like I wrote down the scenes, and I'm like, I wonder if it's what I think it is. But okay, we'll wait. Okay, so before I give you more of my initial reactions, I was so pissed off because I woke up like around 7 o'clock that Thursday. I think it was released, right? The 13th. And, I was getting ready for work. I was looking on my phone. Bridgerton was out maybe 7 hours at that point. Spoilers everywhere. I was so upset. I'm like, what happened to the days where at least we could write spoiler warning? But like, what did I get spoiled on? Michaela. Immediately I saw.
Okay. But I guess it's because people were so mad about that.
Yeah.
But still.
Yeah. And I was so pissed. And all these pictures, I'm like, it just came out a few hours ago. I mean, I guess now I've learned my lesson to avoid like any social media. But so yeah, I feel like we need to have a unspoken rule. Like, if you're going to have a spoiler, at least write spoiler warning, or maybe, I don't know, wait 24 hours. But
yeah, that would be nice. There's definitely ways to get around that and to make sure that you are, existing on the internet as somebody that's considerate of other people, because a lot of people can't stay up that late to watch.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed was the variation in the trees in the intro. I thought that was so cool how... Do you know what I'm talking about? The imagery where it was like a bright and happy scene, and then windy or rainy.
Whomping Willow in Harry Potter in the Prisoner of Azkaban. Yeah, I thought it was kind of crazy that they did that. I was like, oh, they're really like driving home the fact that there's a storm looming over this happy couple, and it's Lady Whistledown.
Yeah. Season 2, everything was really, really slow. So I was still kind of shocked at how quick everything was moving in this season. I was like, oh, okay, this is happening now. This is different. But I still don't think it was too fast.
Yeah, for me, I also noticed that the pacing picked up. I didn't mind the pacing of the first half of the season, but I think that like in a perfect world, I think that or in my perfect world, they would have wrapped up a couple of the subplots in the first half instead of waiting to wrap everything up in the second half. Like, I think that they could have easily wrapped up Marcus and Violet, for example, in the first half. But maybe not if they were waiting for Francesca and John to square things away. I guess that's the only thing that was holding them up, because that was her whole condition about them pursuing something more. But I think that they could have even like left it at like, if we get all our things squared away, then yes, I'm interested. They could have saved some space there. I think they could have also wrapped up Benedict earlier.
That's true.
Easily.
Yeah.
Those are like the two big ones for me. I feel like that they sucked up so much air in the second half. And it does make it, I guess, exciting, and it keeps viewers intrigued regardless of whether or not they care for the main couple. But for me, it sucked up a lot of air.
Yeah, they should have had more Kate and Anthony instead.
Well, like, so that's the other thing, too. It's nice to see them come back. But yeah, like they could have had a little bit more breathing room.
Yeah. All right, should we jump into episode 5?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so the episode is called TikTok. Lady Whistledown's surprising engagement announcement, oh boy, can I say it, reverberates through the ton while Penelope grapples with the need to disclose her true identity. this episode, I was just like crying so much. I was like, I'm like in a very emotional state when I was watching it. So we see they're walking into the Bridgerton house after the carriage scene. We have the slow motion, almost the music, the heartbeat. It's like we were kind of seeing it from Penelope's point of view. And I really, really loved that. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I thought it was bittersweet because then right after the beat of happiness, you get that moment between her and Eloise. And it just reminds you that there are still loose ends to wrap up here. But I also thought that that was really cleverly done. Even the way that like Colin's "we're engaged" is slow-moed and echoed really kind of added to how she kind of was having this out-of-body experience.
Yeah, I love how everyone just accepted it immediately. They're like, "Oh, congratulations!" And Hyacinth, she made me cry, and I love her so much, and I think she's becoming such a star, and I'm looking forward to her season. But then, that also makes me think about the fact that like she was a minor when first started filming, and like what is that like to transition? Yeah,
yeah. I mean, like we've seen that happen on quite a few other shows. The most recent example I could think of is, Game of Thrones with Sophie Turner and Maisie Williams. So yeah, it's hard to tell if they're going to recast or if they're just going to keep going depending on how, I think she must be like 17 now, which is wild.
Yeah.
Like 16, 17. Yeah. I think that so that is something that in the books, it's made very clear that Penelope is basically like family because she's over there all the time. And I think that we get a little bit of a sense of that in the show, especially in the earlier seasons. But it was really nice to be reminded of that based on just how excited Hyacinth was. To be like, she's going to be my sister now. And that she's excited because Penelope has spent so much time with them and they genuinely love her.
Yeah, I thought that was beautiful. And then we see the satisfaction from Pen announcing her engagement in Whistledown. I kind of liked that. And she gave a lot of really wonderful facial reactions this season, Pen did. I loved it. And like you could see just how much she loves Whistledown.
Yeah, definitely. And it was kind of like, I mean, it's very rare that we see her put herself in the column in a nice way. And this was just like good news.
Yeah.
So it was fun to see her react to that for sure.
So let's talk about Kate and Anthony because we see them show up here. And I just love how playful he is. But you also see Kate kind of looking concerned and you see her lost in thought. But I loved their return. And I really just wish we saw more of them this season. We'll talk about it later on. But I'm a little bit disappointed in where they kind of ended up.
I just kind of feel like they're writing them out for whatever reason. And that's unfortunate because obviously, I mean, like we didn't see any of Daphne, for example. I can't remember if we talked about that, but yeah, the funniest thing though is like as soon as they showed up, I was like, she's pregnant, like right away. Yeah. It was like, there's no hiding this. But I thought that was a nice little subplot for them. Listen, Anthony is not my favorite Bridgerton, and I'm sorry for anybody that I've offended in ranking him so low. But I do think that he, like, especially in this second half, is way more endearing than he, like, probably has ever been for me in, like, his entire stint on the show.
That's so funny because I'm like, what does it say about me that I found him so endearing in season 2?
Different strokes for different folks,
I loved the scenes with the brothers, and I think that's why I'm so disappointed that it does seem like he might not be playing as much of a role moving forward. I think Bridgerton really thrives when we see the scenes of all of them together and their relationship, and I'm really disappointed that we didn't see as much of that between the three of them.
My favorite scenes to that point is when they're asking Colin about his engagement and stuff, and I just think, again, like, to go back to that point about Penelope always having been family, I think it's very sweet that Anthony is concerned about her honor. And I think that you could like read that two ways, where you could just say, oh, he's not going to have his brother compromise anybody and besmirch the family name like without making good on it. But on the other hand, I think also because Penelope has been around and because they're familiar with the Featherington family, I think he also, like Colin, knows that she has no father. She has no older brother like Daphne did and all his siblings do that can help make sure that she gets herself into a good match marriage. So yeah, I think that it was very sweet that he was like, he better be, you know, I mean, like, obviously they already knew he was engaged anyway, but I thought that was really cute.
Yeah. I love them. So let's talk about the scene where Portia is upset that she finds out about the engagement through Whistledown, and, you know, she says all those really cruel things to Penelope. Penelope seems really hurt, thinking that Colin might not love her because he didn't say it. And I know you read the book, and I think you might have mentioned something similar to this scene before, but I was surprised when Colin ran in. I was like, oh, yes, this is amazing. And I loved him standing up for her and being assertive. I thought that was really, really romantic.
Me too. It plays out a little bit differently in the books. In the books, that scene, it basically happens after the carriage and after he proposes. So the carriage happens in broad daylight, and then he's like, let's go. We're going to tell your mom that we're engaged. And when he goes in, the whole family is there. Like, it's like the Featherington afternoon Sunday tea or whatever. And the whole time, Portia assumes that he's coming to call on Felicity, who is the fourth Featherington sister, who is not in the show at all. And also, or Philippa, because Philippa's not married yet. I believe it's Philippa, because she keeps asking Philippa to show him her watercolors or something like that. And she keeps like trying to get Penelope to leave. And Colin's like, no, she's staying right here. Or she'll be like, oh, why don't you come sit over here across the room? And Colin's like, no, she's going to sit right next to me. And she still doesn't get it until finally he says, like, everybody leave. And this is what's what. I think that they handled it really well on the show. And that was, again, a moment I was looking forward to. I was hoping that they would put in. And I know a lot of book readers were really hoping for something like that as well. And so it was super satisfying, to your point.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved how quick it happened. I noticed there's a lot of like tropes that sometimes happen in shows that I'm just like, oh, great, now they're going to drag this out forever. And I was like, great, they're going to drag it out where Penn doesn't know if he loves her. But like, nope, it was immediate. And I loved that. That was so good. Ooh, how did I forget? We have the mirror scene in this episode.
It's the big one.
It is, and that's where I got that feedback from somebody. I'm assuming they want to be anonymous, where they said they wish they lost their virginity to Colin, and I get it because it was very tender and gentle. I really loved that.
Yeah, I think a lot of the sex scenes, well, like the two bigger ones, they do feel like almost too intimate to be watching, which is kind of crazy because obviously they're in a show like Bridgerton where like you're supposed to be enjoying the fact that it's a little bit spicy, but because they're so sweet with each other and it's not really like any loss of virginity we have seen in the show, because I think Nicola Coughlan even said in an interview, it's like not like the other Bridgerton women weren't virgins before, it's that Penelope's like a super virgin. And I think it really is like the dynamic of them as a couple that lends itself to these like sweeter, more tender, more like raw moments than we have gotten in seasons prior. And like, again, I also want to bring up the point of like consent too, which we saw in the carriage scene. And that carries over into what everybody's calling the mirror scene, even though the mirror is just like the first half of it, right? I think it's really sweet that he keeps checking in with her and making sure she's okay, making sure she still wants to keep going. It's not just like one and done. I think that is what makes it particularly lovely.
Right, because consent is ongoing.
Yeah.
That's true. I do wish we saw a little bit more of the mirror. It was very quick.
I really thought, have you seen One Day on Netflix?
No, I haven't.
Well, spoilers for One Day, there is a sex scene that is like shot mostly through a mirror. Like you see a lot of it like in the mirror, and I really thought that they were going to do something like that for Colin and Penelope. But I think that the way that they utilized the mirror in the show actually works really well, because in the books there is no mirror scene. It's just something that gets brought up. Colin says, I want to do it in front of a mirror, but they never actually do that at all. Right. So this whole thing about fans like being excited for the mirror scene, it's like the mirror scene they never got. But yeah, I just think that using it as a way to like affirm the love they have for each other, it was so much more beautiful than like anything I had thought it was going to be before we got it. And also, I have to give a shout out to the music supervisor, because whoever picked POV by Ariana Grande to use in this scene specifically, genius.
Yeah, the music in this show is always so amazing. I love it. I loved that Pen wanted to go again. I was like, she's so great. She's so assertive and confident in this season, and it's just I love it.
Yeah. And I think they are so, again, I just think they're so sweet together. And I love that they can like laugh together and giggle together. And I think that really is kind of such a big part of their dynamic, even like before they become romantic interests for each other. They're always just kind of like sharing a private joke, giggling in the corner. And it's really sweet to see that transfer over into their love story in a different way.
Do you think there was enough sex in this season?
That's a tough question, because I don't know. I feel like that is subjective. I personally feel like they oversold the spiciness.
They totally did.
Interviews, especially for the second half. Yep. And I also think that it was kind of weird that this is like the only couple they've never given us a sex montage for.
That's true. They did.
And I'm just curious about why.
Did they do that for Kate and Anthony?
Yeah, I feel like it's way longer. Right. But even like when they get together, I feel like they linger more on like every touch and every moment. And I know that it's a completely different dynamic, and so like it's kind of like comparing apples to oranges, but I just feel like they probably pared it down a lot. It just feels to me like it was edited down. Especially because they kept saying that the scene was really long and they were worried about like their families watching it and stuff like that. So I don't know. I just thought it felt pretty short.
It did. I think I saw somewhere online that there's rumors that they cut out a lot of the sex scenes.
Supposedly, but like those like the rumored set of scenes that were supposedly cut, the fans are like now petitioning Netflix to release. Those descriptions are coming from like some random Reddit user, and until that person shows me their credentials, like I'm not going to believe it,
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, I definitely think there could have been a little bit more.
They could have, if they had just like extended the mirror scene a little bit. And honestly, I'm not even talking about like the actual sex part of the mirror scene. If they had just extended the actual scene where they're in front of a mirror and he's undressing her, and if they had just like extended a bit of like the post-coital afterglow, and then extended that last scene we get of them in bed together in episode 8 where she's on top, then it would have been fine. I think that they could have like played it off, but because both scenes kind of felt a little short, it does feel like they overpromised and underdelivered on the spiciness.
I agree.
Unless they were just talking about Benedict and his threesomes, in which case like nobody was really coming to see that. No shade, but it was like unexpected. Like we were not expecting that subplot. Yeah.
We've seen Benedict in bed, like where I'm ready for like the romance.
This is Benedict. Like his third threesome in the whole course of the series.
I know, right? So let's talk a little bit about Cressida. So I did receive some listener feedback that I was thinking as well. Let's see. It was from author Elise, and I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but I'll spell it. So if anyone wants to look you up, it's Palsulich. But she said, why did Cressida not just go after Lord Debling after Pen and Colin got engaged? And I kind of agree. Like, what happened there? I thought they would have had a perfect match.
I'm so surprised by that, too. I really thought they were going to tie up her storyline that way. It's been a while since I've read Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, but I believe that she also tries to take credit in that as well. So I think that was like a book plot that was carried over into the show. And I do think it drummed up a lot of tension. And I feel like Bridgerton thrives on trying to throw out a huge curveball in like the back like third of the season, quarter of the season. I think we see that too, even in season 2 with Kate falling off the horse, right? So this is their Kate falling off the horse, except it's Cressida blackmailing them. But you're right. I think that they, like, again, like that, if they had just tied her storyline up a little bit quicker than we may have had more time for other things.
So then we have the engagement party that Kate is throwing, which I also loved her conversation with Eloise. But so we see Cressida hearing about the reward money that the Queen's offering, a large sum of money for whoever uncovers Whistledown. So that's when she announces it. We have Eloise giving the ultimatum that Penn has to tell Colin by midnight, which I was just like, I thought that was a little silly. And then it ends with Cressida saying she's Whistledown and Penn sort of fainting and all of that happening. There was so much happening there. What did you think about that?
Yeah, it was like boom, boom, boom. And honestly, the pacing for episode 5 to me felt really disjointed because everything was happening so fast. I feel like they really tried to cram in so much in there. But on the other hand, I think that that was kind of them telling us, okay, well, like, hang on to your whatevers because, like, this is the pace we're going to keep for the rest of this season. Yeah. So it matches tonally the other 3 episodes that we get, right? Yeah, to me, it just was like a lot at once. And I think that was an episode I had to go back and rewatch. I much more preferred episode 6 to episode 5 because it felt more like they were letting the characters breathe a little bit, even though there were still issues to resolve.
Yeah, so should we move on to episode 6?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so episode 6 is titled Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. A desperate imposter strives to publicly win the Queen's favor. Penelope races to write an urgent missive, but has the damage already been done. That episode opens up with kind of like panic over a new Whistledown not having been delivered. And we see Colin talking to Penelope, and Penelope says something, and I was just like, oh, I love the little double meaning here where she's like, it's just like Cressida to take that which is not hers. And, I love how Colin views that as Cressida trying to like steal the show, but really Penn is upset that she's trying to steal Whistledown. Clever.
His mind is just on the wedding and their engagement. He's so in love. And I think that's why he doesn't hear her. She's said that a few times too over the course of the series. She's really been kind of careless with her words when it comes to him. And I think that's a testament to the fact that she's also like super in love. Because she even says too in the first half, when they get found out for like him helping her find a husband, it would have seemed suspicious if she had not written about me. But it's like, I was just waiting for Colin to ask why. And of course he doesn't, because his world, even at that point, just revolves around Penelope and making sure she's okay. So he's not even like reading into the fact that she shouldn't have even really said that at all.
Yeah. And I'm going out of order here. So it's at the end of this episode where Colin discovers her as Whistledown. Yeah. I was not expecting that at all. That definitely caught me by surprise that it happened at that moment. And again, it was just another example of how quick everything was moving.
Yeah, that's how it happens in the books, basically. But then he tells her to get in the carriage, and then we get the carriage scene. So it's not as like dramatic as him storming away. And I feel like this season has been met with mixed reviews amongst the fans, and I think a big part of that is the fact that there's like a handful of moments that seems like Colin is acting a little out of character for who they've made him in the show, but also as like how he's portrayed in the books, because for all his fury when he does discover she's Whistledown in the books, he never actually like would leave her in a seedy part of town. And I believe Colin wouldn't do that either. So it was really jarring to see him just leave her there on her own.
That's true. I forgot he left her. Watching it, I never really got that he was upset about her being Whistledown because of what she wrote or the secret. I truly think it was all stemming from the jealousy and the envy and the insecurity. And I did get feedback from Kaylin over at Long Live Taylor Pod. She just interviewed me for an episode that came out this week, but she said, well, this is actually from a later episode, but I think it fits in here. Colin is giving insecure man when he says the most humiliating part is that she liked his journals, but she's a renowned writer. And I think that's true. I think it's the insecurity more than anger at her being Whistledown.
Yeah. And I think it's twofold. I think part of it is that. I think part of it is that his feelings are hurt because he knows that she sees him. And so if he has to like accept that she's Whistledown, he also kind of needs to accept that what she wrote about him is true, and he doesn't want to do that. But also just the fact that he thought he knew her, and there's this big secret that she didn't trust him with. So I think it all is kind of like a recipe for disaster. But I think that, I want to say last time we talked about Bridgerton, I had brought up the fact that I was curious about whether or not they were going to play around with the jealousy factor, because they're both writers. And I was like, but they surely won't have time to do that. The woman was too stunned to speak, and the woman is me. I was shocked because and I also think that, like, I don't think that's a bad way to take the story, but I also feel like they rushed through that. Like, that's a huge emotion to unpack, and it's okay. I don't think it's a bad thing that they did that, because I think that at the end of the day, for all the confidence that he exudes, Colin is actually very insecure, as is Penelope. They're two sides of the same coin. They're insecure for different reasons, and it just I feel like I wish they would have utilized that plot point better than they did.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of my biggest complaints about Bridgerton is just the 8-episode seasons, because we don't get enough time to really explore the couple. And then I was hoping, because we knew Kate and Anthony would be in this season, I was like, okay, well, like, we know season 2 was different because the actor that played Simon left or whatever. But so I thought it would be different now. I was like, okay, great. We'll have continuing stories. But I don't think we really had that. And so now I don't want to get my hopes up thinking that we'll get more of that relationship with Colin and Penelope in the next season. But like, I wish either they had more episodes or more continuation in the following seasons.
I hate to say this because, like, I know it's going to leave a sour taste in the mouths of fans that prefer other couples, but I do kind of feel like Colin and Penelope are an interesting and special case purely because so much of the story revolves around Whistledown too.
Yeah.
Like, the story is called Bridgerton, but Lady Whistledown is like the huge third player, right, in everything. And so purely for that reason alone, unless they write out the Whistledown plot completely on the show, I have to believe that we'll see them play a slightly larger active role than some of the past couples have.
You're probably right. And I'm happy for that. I wish we had more Kate and Anthony, because it felt like every scene with them was just setting up to write them out.
Yeah, I don't know, like, how much of that is scheduling conflicts or what.
True.
Because, like, Jonathan Bailey is booked and busy. I'm so happy for him. I don't know how he does it. I think he was filming like 3 different projects, including Bridgerton, when they were filming season 2. I know Nicola was also doing 2 different projects, which is insane because she was co-leading season 3. I'm sorry, Jonathan Bailey was doing 3 different things in season 3. And now he has Jurassic Park and the Wicked promo is going to drum up soon. Maybe that's why they're waiting 2 years, supposedly, to start working on season 4. But that also means that there's more time for them to be booked and busy. So it's hard to tell.
Yeah. And it's not even more of the, I mean, yes, of course, I would love to see more of them as a couple, but I would love to see more of them interacting with the other family members afterwards. Because it's like we have all this growth and it's just disappeared.
And I do kind of wonder if part of the reason why they are sidelining them is because if they don't, they kind of have to sideline Violet in a way, because right now, with them gone, she's acting as Viscount, basically. And that's the reason they give for extending their honeymoon, right? But I kind of feel like that's a little bit of a lazy excuse because Violet still has children to marry off. So I think that she can stand alone without having to be like the head of the actual Bridgerton house. Presumably, it's because they're like, oh, we don't want to move Violet out of this one set.
But we also know Kate would love to still have Violet there.
Right,
and
exactly.
I would love to have a Violet romance, like really, really dive into that. So we have a quote from this episode that I wrote down from Portia. Ladies do not have dreams, they have husbands. And I think that just really shows her perspective on how she views things. And it's just so sad.
It is really sad. And there are a couple things I want to say with regards to this. But firstly, I think that it's really interesting to kind of take into account the sort of love that characters are motivated by and experience, because I think that that also is what motivates them to behave certain ways. So even though Portia has made peace with the fact that Penelope has found herself a love match, she still views it as an advantageous match. And she's still weary with regards to whether or not that love's going to last forever or if it's going to fade, you know? And you can kind of tell like that reading between the lines of that speech specifically.
Yeah, I don't even blame her because she hasn't really had, like she said, a secure man. So she has to take everything into her own hands. And I kind of want her to find a real love match.
The other thing that I love about this too is that I don't know if you remember this. I feel like I only remember it because it was a really particularly nice Colin and Penelope scene. But in season 2, Colin and Penelope talk about dreams. And she basically tells him that her dreams are like, she starts off by talking about her purpose, and she says her purpose will set her free. And then Colin says that he suspects that her dreams are far grander than what she would let on. And that she says that they're just fantasies, but that she thinks that everybody needs to have dreams so that they can use those dreams to basically like exist in the real world. And so like you use your dreams as armor to get through reality. And so I've always thought that it's interesting to see how they keep bringing back the concept of dreams specifically for these two in season 3, because Colin starts dreaming about her before they even get together. And you can tell that that kind of does a number on him, but it also starts breaking down his armor, whereas Penelope's dreams are her armor. And then you have in the back half of season 3, her mom basically saying that women aren't allowed to dream at all. So she's basically telling her to set her dreams aside, even though she's already kind of achieved them in part. Yeah. So it's a really nice, I don't know if like they actually meant to do it that way, but it's a really nice callback either way.
Oh, and I love that then when we also look at Penn meeting with Genevieve and seeing like the opposite. We see like a woman supporting her, saying like that glow of doing something you love. And I'm glad that Penn got that also.
Yeah, because Genevieve is a businesswoman. She's not a lady of high society, but she's made a name for herself. She's supporting herself on her own. In a lot of ways, I'm sure she is a role model for Penelope with regards to how a woman could survive without a husband. I think that for all Eloise talks, Penelope kind of knows that if push came to shove and Eloise needed to find a husband, she could, because she's a Bridgerton and she's beautiful and people love the family. But she doesn't think the same for herself. So I think she's always kind of been looking for this like outward avenue, right? And I think that's probably why the saving all that Whistledown money, which comes into play later as well, is something that she's been doing. Because she's like, well, this will be my nest egg if I never marry.
Yeah. Oh, I loved that scene, but I loved that she had all that money and she used it how she wanted to. And I loved the reactions of everybody in the room when they found out.
She's like slightly more, if I'm being honest.
I love that. She's just so, and then I love her. She looked so badass in her Whistledown cloak at the end of of episode 6. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
So
I like how they tailored it this season. I feel like last season it was like a Little Red Riding Hood coat almost.
You're right.
Yeah.
The dancing in the church. Is there anything you wanted to talk about from that?
Again, like I think that is like so quintessentially Colin. Them just being like a little bit silly. I loved her asking him if he was ever reprimanded as a child, because it reminds us that he is supposed to be like the slightly charming, endearing brother of the three. They give a lot of book Colin's personality to Benedict and vice versa, which is interesting. Yeah, like really? Colin's supposed to be the charmer and the playful
I don't get that
one.
from him. That's interesting.
Yeah. And they've made, I think it's like, it's good and bad, because I think that they've genuinely made Colin more kind on the show. It's referenced again and again and again in the context of the books that Colin is kind, but I think that shines through way more on the show than it does on the page.
He's definitely very sensitive, and I don't mean that as an insult. Like, he's very in touch with his emotions, which I really, really liked.
And I also kind of wonder if that's why his character gets some hate. Like, I think that like there are a lot of people that just don't care for Colin and also Penelope, but specifically for Colin. And I
still
think
don't understand that.
Yeah, but I think it's because he is like, I mean, all the Bridgerton men are kind of emotional in different ways, but he's like a very soft boy, you know? He's very sensitive. And I think that like sometimes people say that they want that. They want male characters that are more in tune with their emotions and that are softer. But then when you finally get them, you know, for all their complexities, we just like don't know what to do with them.
Wow. That's so interesting knowing that Colin and Benedict's personality is a little bit different. I think Benedict has chemistry with everybody. I don't think there's anybody he'll be with that he doesn't have chemistry with.
But see, that's the whole I think that if they had set that up for him, if they had not given that character trait to Benedict from the get-go, and if they had set that up for Colin, then him coming back at the beginning of season 3 with all the swagger would not have looked out of place to people that were like, this doesn't fit. Like, who's he kidding? Right? That was kind of like the reaction to a lot of people online. It's like, this is kind of smarmy and gross. But I think that it ends up working out really well that they gave that to Benedict, because you don't want it to be believable in the context of the show. You want it to look a little bit off because that's not really who he is. And that's such a huge factor of his character development over the course of season 3. So
yeah, I think both of Penelope and Colin, I loved the character development for both of them the entire season. I think it really made a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it's interesting how they're both like trying to find their purposes and their places, but in different ways. So they're mirroring each other's journeys in a very nice way. I'm curious to ask you, like, because I don't think we haven't really gotten a season where there's two love interests going on. Not two love interests, but there's like almost kind of like two romance stories happening at the same time. Did that feel like too much for you? Would you have preferred to have seen that spaced out?
I don't think it felt like too much. I like that. I think I enjoy seeing multiple couples.
Like the double wedding, I know it wasn't like the same because Colin and Penelope had like a big wedding and they just wanted a small one, but I was not expecting them to get married.
Fran and John.
Yeah. I wasn't even expecting them to get engaged.
Yeah, that engagement announcement was so funny. What did you think about Violet being uncertain about the match? Because I still don't know why she was uncertain. Like, what, because there wasn't drama?
Yeah, well, I think that's basically what Francesca says, right? To her, she just says that her love story doesn't look like what Violet knows, but that doesn't make it any less true. And I think she has a good point about that. I don't think it was anything against John. I think she was worried about Francesca making the wrong choice. But I think it comes from a good place. I didn't think it came from a bad place, right?
And then in that episode, we also have Cressida going into the Mayfair ball, basically making her debut as Whistledown. I liked that entrance. I thought it was a good ending to an episode. Like,
yeah, they have her in that crazy red dress, and she just looks like she's about to cause some trouble.
Yeah, I liked that. I know a lot of people are angry at Cressida, but I mean, if we take a step back and look at her family life, look at the situation, like she's doing what she has to do.
Yeah, my issue with Cressida is that through her friendship and kindness, Eloise gives her a lot of options to really turn over a new leaf. And I mean, like, Eloise she's not completely innocent, because I think Eloise is very self-absorbed.
Oh, I 100% agree.
But I do think that, like, the empathy was there for Cressida to really earn her redemption arc. And while I have sympathy for her home life, I don't really, like, have as much sympathy as I have for some other characters that are asking for redemption. Just because she ends up in the same place anyway.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to be better and trying to figure out like the right way to do things, she does things the wrong way because they're easier.
That's true. Episode 7, Joining of Hands. A shocking column fuels the Queen's search for the real Lady Whistledown. As the wedding looms, Penelope questions her future as a wife and a scribe. So something that happened in this episode that got me so mad was when Colin was like, was that part of your planned entrapment? That made me so mad. Like,
I know.
Ugh.
I know. That also, again, just felt really out of character. I don't know why they had him say that. I'm sure, like, they're probably justifying us because he was hurt. He wanted to hurt her back. But it's just, like, it just felt like it didn't fit. Especially because, like, well, I want to ask you, like, do you actually feel like he's marrying her out of obligation?
No.
Exactly. But I feel like they should have told us that. They try and show us a lot and not tell us. I know you're supposed to show and not tell when it comes to storytelling in general, but especially with visual media. But in this case, I really feel like they needed to have him tell us and tell her too.
I agree. Well, and I think like they tried to do that a little bit in the conversation with him and Eloise, where he's like, "Oh, how long have you known?" And then he made that comment like, "Oh, like it's great that you've never been in love or whatever." And I think that's supposed to imply that he's still going to move forward because he loves her. But that's true. I do wish we saw a little bit more of like longing and yearning rather than just anger about it.
I just wish that they would have resolved it a lot sooner than that. And actually, this is a good time for me to bring up how I think they could have fixed this, because all of this happens before the wedding. So before the wedding, we see him at White's, I think, because Mondrich's is already closed, right? He's at the club, and then he drinks a bunch, and then he runs into Penelope, and they shout at each other, and then they make out in the middle of the street. And then he goes home, and he has that nice heart-to-heart with Anthony and Kate, right? So I think what they should have done is they should have had him go home after the club or meet Anthony and Kate on the way back home. And that conversation still happens the way it's supposed to, because that gives Colin the opportunity to say that his real issue is not that he doesn't love Penelope, but it's that he worries that he doesn't really know her, right? That's a real fear.
Yeah.
So I think that should have happened that way. And then from there, he should have run into her.
And have a second carriage scene.
Yes. But the important part is that she gets her big love declaration, and she basically tells him everything he needs to hear in that moment. From the fact that what she wrote about him, while it was painful for him to read, is true. And she wrote him because she just missed who he was. And she'd never loved who he was pretending to be. She's always loved who he really is. And that's what he needs to hear. Because in that moment, when he decides to kiss her, he realizes that it doesn't matter because they still love each other, right? Like, they still have some things to work out, but there's still genuine love there. I don't think that's like a moment of lust. I think that's a moment of love and passion. And I think they should have resolved it right there. I don't think that like resolving it means that he still can't be angry and he still can't have asked her to give up the column. But I think from that point on, we should have seen them united as a team in an effort to get her out of the Whistledown mess, because we still have the whole secret kind of coming out. And that's how I would have fixed it.
Oh, that would have been so beautiful.
I've been thinking about this for a whole week almost. This morning it came to me. That's how I would have fixed it. And then we would have had the back half of 7 plus the wedding and all of 8 with them working as a team. And that's when they're at their best. And he still could have admitted like that in part it was because he was jealous and insecure. Because that is like a motivator as well for his anger.
Yeah, we didn't really get any big love declarations. We got big pen confidence moments.
I think, well, he did have a really nice declaration at the end, but I think part of the reason why it falls a little bit flat is because they did not do a good enough job resolving their issues in the light for us to actually see. We just realized that they've like squared it all away.
Yeah. Oh, Pam, that would have been so good.
That's how I would have fixed it. It's just like shifting, moving, and then that's it. Netflix, call me, hire me. I'll fix it for you all. We can release the pollen cut together.
We also see, like, when they're in the alleyway where she says that she can take care of herself, and he's like, then what good am I to you? We could have had so much more exploration about what that means and how he views himself in the relationship, and we didn't really get enough of that.
And that was like a line that broke me in the trailer when we first got the teaser. And I really thought they were going to do more with that. Yeah. And again, like it's one of those things where they bring up these very real emotions, and then like we just don't hear about them again until they're in love again. It's fine. I'm sorry. But there was no movement made to work through those things.
And it made the wedding feel really sad to me.
It did. And like the only thing listen, I'm such a baby. I still cried during the wedding.
Me too.
In part because They used yellow, and that's been like a fan ask for 4 years, 3 years, however long the show's been out. And then also because it was just beautiful. And then also the dance that they share
Yes.
too. But it was tough because, you know, you can only read between the lines so much as a viewer if you don't like have the script before you to really understand the intentions of the person. And like the one thing I was clinging on to, because like right before then we get that moment that you were talking about where he says like, was this part of your entrapment? And like, I'll marry you because we were intimate and I'm a gentleman, is like the one smile and nod that he gives her. And you're like, okay, like, and like they look really in love and sincere up at the altar. And then also like, aside from that, it was that moment at the end of the dance where he just brushes the back of his fingers across her cheek. And it's like, okay, like they're going to be fine. Like, I know it's going to end in a happy ending, but it's so weird the way they decided to play it.
Yeah, it was very confusing watching it. And I did get listener feedback. So many people sent in about You Belong With Me, saying it was just so cute and was the perfect song. So
it is.
Let's see who sent that in. We had What About My Cat? That's their username. And then again, Kaylin from Long Live Taylor Pod. Both were loving that song, and I loved it too.
Yeah, my favorite part about that choice is that that's such an easy song to assign to Penelope specifically, because she's been loving him basically her whole life.
It was perfect.
But because part one really let Colin linger in his pining and yearning, it actually now works for both of their points of views.
Oh, that's so clever.
That to me is really satisfying as a little music nerd.
I love this.
Yeah, because he's also thinking the whole time, like, I'm the one who understands you. I've been here all along. Can't you see you belong with me? And she's been thinking the same thing.
Yeah, and it was so adorable how everybody just disappeared. I love that trope.
God, that's the part that made me cry too.
Yeah,
because I'm a big baby.
Yeah. Oh, like I was every single episode. I was just nonstop crying, even though I have like a lot of complaints and wishes for the season. I was just crying so much.
It was an emotional ride for me too,
It was,
and I think it was because like it just there's so much that's happening at one time, and you know they're going to be okay in the end, but you're just waiting to see how things are going to resolve, and it's a lot.
Before we get into the queen arriving and into that scene, I definitely want to mention how much I loved the conversation the night before with Anthony and Kate. And Anthony had those great one-liners where he's like, our marriage isn't hard work. Our marriage is perfect. Like, I loved that. I loved them so much because I thought the same thing where Kate's like, marriage is hard work. And I'm like, you guys, is it with you too? And so I'm glad that Anthony said that. He was funny.
Yeah. She's always been, I think, the more practical one of the both of them. So it makes sense that she says that.
Yeah.
But I think like that's such like, it seems like such an Anthony thing to be like, I am the best, so we are the best. Everything I have is the best. You know, I have the best wife. I have the best marriage. I'm going to have the best baby.
I loved also how when Colin sat down, he's just like direct. He's like, what's going on? He didn't like tiptoe around it. He was direct. He's like, what's going on? And then he's like, well, what did she do? And Kate just gives him a look like, oh, no, we don't have to know. I'm like, Anthony is all these viewers just asking the direct questions and going straight to it.
Yeah. I also love that he went straight to her. Like, they both arrive at the same time, and it's clear they've been gone for a while.
Yes. He's like, Kate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Anthony's just like, what am I?
I know. I loved that. See, and that's so why I love the brothers. I think we need them for the relation, not just the couples, but the relationships with each other.
They both got, and I like that they gave them both their moments, because even like earlier on in that episode when they're at White's and Benedict leaves, he gives him a kiss on the head. Yeah. And I think that that's really sweet. I like that they don't shy away from showing that all of the siblings are very affectionate with each other.
Yeah.
And clearly they're very close. We know this, but it's just nice to see it.
I was definitely also missing Daphne this season. I really felt her absence.
And she would have probably set him straight, honestly. Because, like, if anybody knows about, like, a thing or two about keeping secrets, it's Daphne.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I get it. I know there's a lot of other, like, stuff happening behind the scenes, but I wish there was a way to make it all work.
I know. It would be nice.
So we end this episode with the queen arriving, and she's like, everybody who's not a Bridgerton, leave. And I love that Penn goes to leave, and Colin's like, no, you're a Bridgerton now. I was like, oh, I had to watch that like 3 times.
I also love how Lady Danbury is not a Bridgerton, but she stays anyway.
Oh my God, I love her. I love her. Her and Queen Charlotte, like, I want more of them.
Mm-hmm. It was crazy how she put it together in that sense. But I also feel like that was a little bit misguided because Lady Whistledown has written bad things about the Bridgertons before.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was a little too convenient, but we'll give it to them.
Yeah. I loved at the end, Penn said, I am Whistledown. I will not change that. I loved it. I got the chills when she said that.
I just kind of feel like Colin asking her to give it up. It was very like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, or 3 steps back, however you want to put it. And again, like it feels like they just like tore down all the work they put in to make us believe that like he still loved her by basically saying like, I can't accept it. But by saying I can't accept that, he's saying he can't accept her. But then they just got married. It's just like, it's a lot. And this is why I wish that they would have resolved it in my grand master plan way, but
that would have been good. Or more episodes. I don't think 8 episodes is enough.
Yeah, I really think that like that's part of it too. I think you're right. I think this whole like 8 episode season situation that streamers have really been utilizing since their inception is just not great. And it's not even just Bridgerton that suffers from this. I think that almost every show does. And especially when like you see it a lot too when like shows are coming to an end, like Stranger Things introducing new characters, but they still have so many loose ends to wrap up with the characters they have. And it's crazy. But bottom line, I think that if they extended to like 10 to 12, it would be okay. Just like a little bit more breathing room is all shows like this need. And one of my friends was actually saying too that like it makes sense that they try and cram in so much when you think about the fact that Shonda Rhimes is used to a 22 to 24 episode order with network television. And so it almost kind of feels like the meat of the story needs to match that, but in a condensed format, but it's just too condensed at 8. So it's a tough sell.
And I think if they had more episodes, then some of the people who turn into more background characters can have a bigger role.
Yeah, you could have an entire episode of Benedict having threesomes all up and down Mayfair. It would be fine if there were 24 episodes.
I love Benedict, but I'm ready for more for him.
He's got to settle down. Yeah. I just, you know what? And like, I also love him, but I think they've run out of ideas for what to do with him and he's stagnant.
Yeah. What happened to the whole art school painting situation? Like they just sort of dropped that.
Yeah. But like spoken like a true Nepo baby, you know, it's like they just pick things up and drop things and at their whim. I say that with love.
That's true. That is Benedict. He's sort of just doing whatever he wants. Let's see. Anything else with that episode?
I'm trying to think if we missed anything. Oh, well, I think that like the way that like that the whole Whistledown thing becomes a catalyst for Eloise and Penelope to come back together. It was really like that actually worked out really well. And it was nice to see them working as a team together.
I'm glad that they resolved and they didn't carry that on for so long. And Eloise really showed understanding of Penelope, I think. Like she truly got it.
Yeah, I think so. And it's I think that in a lot of ways that was like the most mature we've seen Eloise, where she's basically saying that, you know, her saying like there was a time when I would have given anything to meet Whistledown, but we all have to like grow up basically. What did you think about the fact that like everybody was basically telling Penelope to just give up her pen?
It was annoying me. I mean, I get it from their point of view maybe because Whistledown really hurt them in a lot of ways, but I'm really glad that Penelope didn't because it is a huge part of who she is. But I mean, I get why they were doing it, but still, I don't like it.
Yeah, and I just also think that they didn't like state their case well enough. It was just like, don't do this because it's dishonor upon your family. But yeah, it almost like it sounds so bad, but it almost doesn't feel like a good enough reason. And nobody's really, it's crazy because it's crazy that they don't understand. And she keeps telling them that the whole reason she even started Whistledown is because nobody would listen to her, and then they're still not listening to her.
Yeah, I know. And every time that they would apologize for messing up or something, and she's like, no, it's all of my fault. I'm like, no, they're not being that great here either. You don't have to take the full responsibility. I don't know. Maybe I don't think it was that big of a deal that she wrote gossip in a paper.
And she also like only wrote true things too, so.
Right. Yeah. All right. Before we go into episode 8, I'm going to read some more listener feedback, which I think is a good transition into this episode because I really liked Penelope's like final arc here. Pink Hair Dreamer said that I love that the story wasn't about Colin saving her, but her finding her own voice. Professor Julian Womble, who we also had on this nerd thing a few episodes ago, said that he loved season 3 so much. Laura's Bookish Life over on Instagram said, I loved the Pen final monologue and loved the tense scenes between her and Colin. It was such a complicated back half. So thank you everybody for sending in your listener feedback. It's really cool to receive that feedback and to know that like you want to share it with us to read on the show. So thank you.
Complicated is such a good way to explain it. And I think that's why I've had to like let this back half settle for a bit. The one thing that I do, because I know I've been saying before that I just kind of feel like there was just like, they didn't let Colin and Penelope breathe as much. I think the next thing I'll probably do is just go back and just watch their scenes and see how it feels isolated from all of the other noise, because there's so much noise. It's not bad noise, but there's a lot of noise surrounding that core storyline. And I think that when I do that, I'll be able to make up my mind about whether or not it feels like they had a satisfying ending.
I think for me, it feels like they had a satisfying ending. I just wanted more stuff.
Yeah, well, like the satisfying road to getting there, right? That's part of it. But yeah, like more. Yeah. You just want more.
Yeah. So episode 8, Into the Light. With a rival threatening to divulge her secret for money, Penelope chooses her best path forward as her relationships and livelihood hang in the balance. I was so upset with how Colin handled their wedding night. I just felt so sad for Penelope, and it really bothered me.
I know. Do you know what? He was so crazy for just like, there has to be more rooms in that house. He just decided, he's like, I won't sleep in our bed, but I'll just sleep right outside the door to make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
And that was the craziest part. And then sleeping on the same chase they had sex on
I didn't catch
first
that.
time. Isn't that the same one?
Probably. Yeah.
Oh my God. He just likes to cause himself pain. He was up all night.
And then I think it was a different night where he goes into the room to get like a blanket or whatever, and he sees Penelope looking gorgeous. I know a lot of people online were really hoping that they would have angry sex, but I definitely do agree that that's not in his character to do it. But I mean, maybe they could have given us a dream or something.
Yeah. That would have been very like, doesn't that happen in Twilight too? Where I guess I just have Twilight on the brain today. Where Bella, like Edward's like, I'm not gonna have sex with you anymore because it's too dangerous. And then Bella has a dream and she's like, I need my husband.
I don't remember, but that's so funny.
Anyway, I feel like they could have played it that way for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I'm like mixed on the angry sex thing. I think that, I don't know if that's like, I can't decide if that's in their character or not, honestly.
Yeah.
Because even like, I mean, like you could argue that when they have that like hot and heavy makeout outside of the modis, that like I'm sure some people could read that as like hot, angry foreplay, but I didn't read it that way because I just like, it was like basically her reminding him that she loves him and that she loves him for a good reason. And so like to me, it didn't read that way, but yeah.
So he's pretty much angry at this point because she doesn't want to give up Whistledown.
Yeah, and he doesn't understand why. But see, here, this is my whole thing. I know that communication solves things too quickly, but they never talk about it at all. Yeah. Either of them. He just keeps saying, I don't understand why you won't give it up. And she's like, I'm not giving up. Why? Neither of them think to ask why. Too easy, right?
I know.
Is this why people pay you the big bucks in therapy? Because nobody's asking why?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I don't know if this is like jumping too far ahead, but Portia finding out like right after Cressida reveals that she knows.
Loved that.
Yeah. And the fact that like Portia automatically accepts it as the truth too, because she just like, it's like almost like the first time she's actually seeing her daughter.
Yeah, I loved their arc this whole back half of the season, and I'm glad that it happened in a way where Penelope stood up for herself throughout it. Really, with all of the Featheringtons, I really loved the growth in that family.
Yeah, it was so funny to see Prudence so upset over the lack of attention. She's never not had her mother's undivided attention.
Yeah, but then I loved when she said Penelope was like made such a beautiful bride and bent it. It's like, oh,
yeah, those pregnancy hormones kicked in hard.
So we have Cressida blackmailing Penelope, and then Colin goes to save the day and comes back and made it worse.
Here's the thing, like, and this is, you could actually say the same about Colin towards Penelope too. I'm actually surprised that they never really explored this more for their dynamic. It's that Colin has only ever known a house full of love. And like unconditional love, right? His parents had a love match. All of his siblings have found love matches. He thinks he's found a love match. I think Cressida is right when she says that he takes for granted the fact that his family will love him and stand by him forever. I also think that he doesn't really realize until he walks in on Portia telling Penelope that she doesn't think that he loves her, that Penelope also has never known a house that's like really full of love because her parents did not have a love match. You know, like that's really his fatal flaw here. Like I actually think that he was actually doing pretty well up until that point. And then he really put his foot in it when he said, nobody will believe you, because then it was like, well, she was already mad. Like you just made her more mad.
I know. And I like how he's like, I've felt so lonely on my travels. I love that Cressida called him out. I also love that she did call him out, saying, like, it doesn't sound like you hate Whistledown, but more that you're envious of her. I was like, yes, I'm glad that. And he's like, what? No, I'm not. And I'm glad that he eventually did realize, like, yes, he is kind of jealous with the writing and all of that.
Yeah, I think that is important for sure. Especially because, like, I think it's right before their wedding, it's in episode 6 where he tells Penelope that he's working on his manuscript. He's decided to brush up his travel writing to turn it into a book. And she's like, oh, like, if you want, I can help you edit it. And he's like, I just want something that's mine. And yeah, it's kind of crazy to hear him say that. And then he doesn't understand that, like, all she's ever wanted was something her own.
Yeah. Yeah. But then in the epilogue, we see that he said he couldn't have gotten it done without her help. So I'm glad that they tied that up a bit.
Yeah. So they like find themselves in the end, right? They go back to what they're supposed to be. And I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but I do appreciate that he at least addressed all of that in like the last big love declaration in the end.
Yes.
Because I think that was really important.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I loved that, and I really didn't know. I didn't know if Penn would announce it to everybody that she's Whistledown, or if it would just be to the Queen and they kept it as a secret. Just that whole ball was beautiful. I love that she used the money to pay for it, but let her mom take the credit. I loved that speech. And I also thought it was a really good point that she said right now everyone's okay with it, but it might change in the future. And, you know, I don't think anybody truly cares who Whistledown is. I think that'll be forgotten. I think they just care about what's written.
Yeah, because they're kind of all self-absorbed. Mm-hmm. And you can even see, too, that they appreciate when certain things get out. Like when she has that column that she releases in order to discredit Cressida, she makes that point about the wife whose husband is cruel to her, and the wife's like, haha, like, you got yours, now everybody knows that you're a piece of shit, you know. So I think there is, like, people take joy in it, they relish in it, even if they are scared of finding themselves in the words that she's writing. So
I definitely think we're gonna have Whistledown like in the rest of the seasons. It's just a part of the show. I loved how the Queen and Lady Danbury spoke about Whistledown and how like they loved the gossip, and like Lady Danbury brought up a good point. Like, what is the Queen gonna do if there's no Whistledown anymore? That's what she lives off of, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of like almost the end of Hook. Hook with Robin Williams.
Yeah.
And he's like, what would the world be like without Captain Hook? It's like one can't exist without the other. I think that she does realize in that conversation that she needs something to keep her going. But I also think that obviously like the Penelope's column is not that deep, right? It is just gossip at the end of the day. But I do think that it's a really interesting commentary on media in general, especially with the Queen saying like, now it's up to us to keep her accountable and basically keep her honest. I think that's the way like media should be, right? Media is there to be watchdogs of history. They are supposed to keep people that are in power accountable, but it's up to the people to keep media accountable. So it's twofold. It's a two-way street.
I wonder what that's going to be like for them moving forward, like how Colin is going to manage her being Lady Whistledown. But I loved that we see him accepting that and saying like, you have always had one voice. There's no separating you from Whistledown. And then I loved where he said, how lucky I am to stand by your side and soak up even a little bit of your light. Like I loved that he's letting her shine rather than trying to dim it.
Yeah, and I think that I think it shows character growth. Even like the next thing he says too, where he says if something like if my only purpose in life is to love you, then I'll be a very happy man. I think that
I wrote it down.
Okay, please read it.
If my only purpose in life is to love a woman as great as you, then I will be a very fulfilled man indeed.
Yeah, so I think that is really important and he says this too when he finds out that she's Whistledown, that he said that he knew something was wrong, but that he foolishly thought it was because he was not worthy of her love. Yeah. And I think that that's such a beautiful way to tie up a lot of his insecurity, which is that he's always felt like he's not good enough for a multitude of reasons. Yeah. He's a third son. He has no purpose. He has no title. And the fact that he makes peace with the fact that all Penelope needs is for him to love her and everything else is just a bonus. And that's a really nice way to tie everything up. It even ties up his whole then what good am I to you? Because he thinks that his love is not enough, right?
Aww.
And so he finds purpose in realizing that he's enough on his own and that she knows, that's all she wants. That's all she's ever wanted.
I loved how the last shot was them outside the window where she always would look at him. And I know people online were saying that too. That was really sweet.
That was really sweet. And they all have babies now. I cannot believe that she was pregnant the whole back half, basically.
Yeah.
That's wild. I kind of going back, and I thought it was really sweet, but I wouldn't have minded if they hadn't done that. I know they had to tie up the Featherington heir thing that they brought up at the top half of the season. But now I'm just thinking how's she gonna whistle down it up in season 4 if she's got a baby? I mean, now they have maids and stuff, I'm sure.
I know.
Ray's gonna get a pay raise.
I know.
She's already dressing better.
Yeah, they don't have to worry about any responsibilities in that world.
Yeah, I don't know. In my head, I'm just imagining that Colin also feeds her information that he hears. So then she expands the gossip to the male gossip because he's such a wife guy.
I would love that. Yes. Oh, I hope we get some scenes of that. That would be great.
Or it's either going to be that. In my head, it's either that or it's did you watch Game of Thrones?
No.
Okay. So in Game of Thrones, there's there's a character named I think it's Varys, he's the master of secrets, and he's always oh, my little birds told me this. So he has people that feed him rumors and secrets, and that's how he keeps his standing. And I could see it being something like that because it'll take some time for people to forget she's Whistledown. But if she has other people feeding her gossip, this would be so much easier if it was present day, because she'd just have an anonymous ask box somewhere and people could just email in. It's very Dumois. Penelope in 2024 would basically be Dumois. We're not in 2024, so there's got to be a way that they do it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking forward to see what they do with that. Oh, one thing that I loved was when right before Pen was about to give her final speech to everybody, how Portia grabbed her hand. I was oh, this. I love
sweet.
that.
Yeah. That was bittersweet because I appreciate that they showed that her mother was finally being supportive of her. On the other hand, I would have liked to have seen Colin being supportive of her in that moment too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that would have relied on them tying up their baggage earlier.
I think that's what we really missed out on, kind of what you said about them being a team. Like, we missed that support that we could have seen him showing her. So hopefully we get more of that next season.
Yeah. Because, and you know, to that point, they are primed for that, because I think that, like, his final love declaration is really a testament to the fact that he sees her as an equal, and that her dreams are of no less value than his own, which is very progressive for the time, but also very important for the both of them and their relationship moving forward. So
overall, I love them. Kate and Anthony are still my favorite couple, but I absolutely, I love them. They're great.
Yeah, they've always been my favorite couple. So I think that's why I have the minor issues that I do. But overall, I think that they did they gave us a lot this season, and it's not all bad. There's a lot of good there too.
So what I want to talk about now it's going to have some book spoilers from a future book. So I'll come back in and edit and tell you how far to fast forward. If you do not want to be spoiled with a major, major, major spoiler from future Bridgerton episodes, then fast forward about 3 minutes. So Pam, I'm assuming you know about Michael Sterling and how it's now Michaela Sterling. So how much do you know of Francesca's plot point? Because I don't want to spoil it for you if you don't know.
Yeah, so I know that John dies.
Okay.
So that she eventually ends up with Michael. And I know that her story really centers a lot around infertility issues, which Michael helps her through, which is why people are kind of using that as a way to justify the fact that they don't like the gender bend.
Yeah.
But I can't speak too much more on the book.
That's all I know too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because I haven't read that book.
Like I mentioned in the beginning, I was spoiled. So immediately I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got spoiled. And I know there's a lot of hate online, which I think is really unfortunate, because I still think a beautiful story can be told. I think the one thing that seemed more disappointing was after their kiss, after they got married, it seemed like Francesca was disappointed. And I know a lot of people were saying, in the books, she did love John.
Yeah, they were in love. That does kind of mess things up a little bit, for sure, especially because of the way they played it. They really played it like she saw Michaela and that was her thunderbolts from the sky. That was her bi-panic moment. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it does make me sad for John, and they really had something sweet together. And I think that for a lot of people that don't necessarily mind the gender bend of the character of Michael, they are kind of mourning the loss that they were showcasing a different type of love with Fran and John. And they did appreciate the quiet stillness that they cultivated together, and they thought it was rather sweet. So
I loved it. I thought it was so cute. And now I feel like now it's kind of because she didn't show that she loved him, it's kind of validating Violet's point.
Yeah, and you're right. It does kind of make Violet's behavior make a little bit more sense, because it almost kind of makes you realize that she knew that there was no spark there.
Yeah, and I did like the idea that they could have a spark without it being this big dramatic spark, but I guess we'll see. But otherwise, I mean, I thought it was super cool when I saw that they did the gender bend, because I do think Bridgerton needs some diversity in terms of relationships.
Yeah.
So
when they said, oh, this is my cousin Michaela Sterling, I was like, wait. And then I had to Google it really quick, because I was like, I know he has a cousin and it's a Sterling, but I wasn't sure if, and I was like, oh my God, it's Michael, but not Michael. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I kind of wish I could have had that cool, shock moment of oh no, but spoiled. I also got spoiled with, and this was my own fault. I won't give the spoiler here, but in the last Stranger Things season, don't do what I did. I looked up the actor. I was like, I wonder who's the actor that plays Vecna. And I was just curious. And that was I don't know if you've seen it, but that was a huge spoiler. Have you seen Stranger Things?
I have. Yeah. I think, you know what? That wouldn't have been a spoiler for me, because I write news. I get spoiled all the time.
Oh yeah.
Because of journalism and So it's very rare that I don't have to, I don't get spoiled. But it's still fun for me. But yes, I understand.
I know.
There was this one really quick. I'll tell you a quick story from my EW days. Sometimes if we had downtime, we would get asked to transcribe interviews. And one of the senior writers had done like all the interviews for the whole season of Game of Thrones. He had just gone over to Iceland and then like interview the whole cast about the whole season so that he could just like prep the interviews for like the entire duration of that season. So I was sitting there and I was transcribing, and this like basically like the biggest twist of that whole season, and I won't spoil it for you because I know you haven't seen it and you might at some point, just gets dropped out of nowhere. And I was like, what? Aww. And so then I emailed this guy the transcripts. He's like, oh, how'd you like the interviews? I was like, yeah, it was really great, except like I did not register that I now know everything that happens in this season. I was really excited. And he goes, oh yeah, sorry.
How does that impact you then, like watching things after you're spoiled? Like, does it impact it for you?
It's like, it's still cool because like, obviously you don't see it, you just hear about it, right? So there's some stuff that like, are you a Veronica Mars fan?
No.
Okay. This was like the most poorly handled situation I've ever seen in my life. So Veronica Mars obviously was a big show in the early 2000s, and it's since come back a number of times. Like once there was a movie, and then they did also like a 10 episode miniseries. I think the 10 episode miniseries that they did, or maybe it was less than that, on Hulu, the revival, that came out probably in like 2014, 2016. So a lot of us in the media got screeners, and Hulu sent out a PR blast that, hey, you guys have screeners for this. And it was like right before Comic-Con. And then on the bottom, they usually put a DNR. It's like, do not reveal, which is important. Okay. Right. So they say, do not reveal these big plot points. The first one was major character death. And everyone was like, what? Like, we know that this is partially our job, but like almost every journalist I know that day on Twitter was like, hey, Hulu, fuck you. Like, we're not supposed to know, but also like that should have gone without saying that we couldn't reveal a major character death.
Wow.
Yeah. So usually what I do with screeners, if I can, is like, I'll just watch them and then I read the DNR after. Because that makes sense. But sometimes so like it can't be avoided. You just like have to know. Yeah. It's like, okay, like it's the nature of the beast. Yeah. But yeah, there's been a few times where I've like genuinely been disappointed, and then all the other times it's like, okay, it's fine. Gotta pick and choose my battles.
Can I include that in the show?
Yes.
Like all that stuff? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so our final thoughts. So, overall, I really loved it. There's a few things that I think we're missing that I would like to see in future episodes. I kind of liked that there was a break between episodes because then we got all that hype and that fun period online. So I'm definitely in support of them doing that again. What about you?
I think it gave us time to really like be excited about certain things. I don't know if the carriage scene would have had the pop culture moment it did without the break in between, for example. Honestly, not to like manifest something that some people might not want, but I do kind of sometimes miss like the weekly drops of episodes. House of the Dragon is back now. HBO does weekly drops. I think it's going to be really fun, especially when that starts revving up, to be able to go online and just talk about one episode for a whole week. I think that this season of Bridgerton in particular was so jam-packed that they could have done a weekly release, or like release 2 episodes at a time for like 4 weeks or something like that. And that would have been really fun too, because there were quite a few cliffhangers. Like imagine having to wait a week between when Colin follows her and finds out she's Whistledown for the next episode. Oh
my God, that would have been so good. Yeah, and then the theories, like you can't really have theories.
Or like the Queen being like cutting it after the Queen saying like everybody who's not a Bridgerton can leave.
Yeah, I do miss those days. But then, I say that now, but then when I watch the episodes, I'm like, I'm ready for the next episode, and I love binge watching.
More. So. Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course. At the same time, we all finished the carriage scene. We're like, we have to wait a whole month? What do you mean?
Yeah. So one thing I was missing, and I hope to see next season, is more of Queen Charlotte and George. I was hoping like we would get a little bit more to them, especially because we did have Queen Charlotte come out. I was hoping we'd get a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that they definitely played more with the subplots we got of them in like the Bridgerton present day in season 3. And we saw that too with like Violet and Agatha finally acknowledging that Agatha had had an affair with her dad, for example.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We didn't talk about that. I loved that scene. That was that was so awkward.
Yeah, it was really awkward. But yeah, like it would have been cool to have seen a little bit more of that. I'm actually curious to know if they'll greenlight another spinoff in between, because 2 years seems like a suspiciously long time to wait.
It is.
And we also had to wait 2 years between season 2 and season 3 because they dropped Queen Charlotte in the middle.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I would love another spinoff.
Yeah, like a Violet and Edmund one. That would be cute. I think there's a book for their story.
Oh, I would love that. That would be cute. Who are you hoping season 4 is about?
Oh my God. I think I'm really gunning for Benedict, mostly because I fear what they're going to do to him if they don't give him something to do.
Yeah, I think people are also thinking maybe Eloise, but I don't think Eloise has enough going on. She doesn't need it yet. I think we could still have some growth for her. And I think there was some stuff said at the end of the season that kind of signaled that Benedict's season is coming up. I think they always like to give that little teaser. So I think he's next.
Do you think they'll do another double love match season like they did this year?
Yes, I think so. Oh, wait, but then when would Eloise be? Because I feel like
after that.
Yeah. Okay. I think so. I could see that happening. So is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so. I feel like we covered so much. But I'm sure we missed stuff. So hopefully we didn't miss your favorite part if you're listening. We tried our best.
well, also, like, if there was a part we didn't cover, it's probably because I didn't have a lot to say about it. So it would have been a boring section of the episode anyway. So I like to only cover stuff I'm actually, like, enthusiastic about in some way.
Fair.
Awesome. Well, Pam, thank you for being here. This is so much fun, and I am excited to go on What's the Hype to talk about Bridgerton, defend Anthony a bit, because I know there's some differing opinions there, so everybody definitely check that out.
Yeah, and our episode will be out on Friday, June 21st over there. I don't know when Morgan's going to have this episode up, but...
I don't know. I'm such a perfectionist with editing. We'll see. I'm not going to be as much of a perfectionist with this one, but we'll see. I'll try to have it out either. It'll probably be around that same time, but yeah. So where can everybody find that? Where can everybody find you?
Yes. So you can find me on all my personal socials at Pamela Gocobachi. I'll let Morgan put links in because my last name is a mouthful. And you can find links to listen to Millennial, which is our politics, pop culture, and lifestyle podcast over at millennialshow.com. And if you want more pop culture goodness, you can check out our brand new podcast, also from the Millennial team and the MuggleCast team at whatthehypepodcast.com. And we're a pretty new show. We've been out for like maybe 2 weeks now, so we would really appreciate the support over there if you want more pop culture chats.
Yes, everyone definitely go check it out. It's really good and it's really fun. Thank you so much for listening, and be sure that you are following That Nerd Thing wherever you are listening to your podcast so that you don't miss an episode. And if you enjoyed this discussion, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe and like this video. You can follow That Nerd Thing on TikTok and Instagram at That Nerd Thing Pod. If you disagreed with us on this episode, you can reach out at thatnerdthingpod@gmail.com. And I'd love to hear if there is like a movie, a TV show, or a book that you would want me to like have another sort of recap episode on That Nerd Thing. I know this episode was different than the typical episodes, but it was so much fun, and maybe I'll sprinkle in a few more, over the year or so. And again, thank you everybody so much for listening. Pam, thank you so much for being here. This was so much fun, and I definitely want to have you back on again for something. I'm sure we'll have something else we could talk about.
Of course, anytime. It's always a blast.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.